For this level, we're looking at exchange rates. So we're looking at the value of a currency, like the Canadian dollar, relative to another currency, like the US dollar. And to get us started at looking at exchange rates, let's start with the Big Mac Index. So the Big Mac is one of the few goods that in the world is essentially the same from country to country. So we can actually look at the value of currency for one country compared to another by comparing how much they charge for the Big Mac. So the idea here is purchasing power parity. When we look at the value of the Canadian dollar in, say, US dollars, then that Canadian dollar, if we look at the exchange rate should convert it. So whatever you're paying in the US for a Big Mac, if you take your US money, so the Big Mac in the US is about $5.30 as of July 2017. So if it costs $5.30 for a Big Mac in the US, and we take that $5.30 US and we convert it into Canadian dollars, whatever you convert it into, okay, that amount should buy you a Big Mac. So purchasing power parity says that when we take our money should adjust so that when you convert your money from one country to another, the money you would have used to buy a Big Mac in one country, when you consider the exchange rate, will then buy you a Big Mac in the other country. So currencies will adjust until you can have the same purchasing power, that is, you can get the same goods with the different currencies using that exchange rate. So when we do that, we can actually look at how much does it cost to get a Big Mac in different countries, and what does that say then the exchange rate should be. So this gives us an idea what the exchange rate should be, and we can compare it to what the exchange rate actually is and see if our currency is over or undervalued. So let's take a look at how this works. So the Big Mac Index is posted by The Economist. And when we look at the Big Mac Index on The Economist website, you'll see, for example, here it shows Canada. And in Canada, it costs $5.97 for a Big Mac. This is compared to the $5.30 US for a Big Mac. So $5.90 Canadian dollars versus $5.30 US dollars. So we can actually compare the price of the Big Mac in the two countries to figure out what the exchange rate should be and compare it to what the exchange rate actually is. Now the Big Mac Index uses the US as a benchmark. So let's take a look at the US and then we'll look at comparing exchange rates with other countries. So like, for example, the Canadian dollar versus the euro. All right, so let's just open up a blank sheet of paper here. All right, now we said that if you get a Big Mac in Canada, it's going to cost you $5.97. If you get a Big Mac in the US, that's Canadian dollars, if you get a Big Mac in the US, it'll cost you $5.30 US. So we can figure out what the exchange rate should be. So for example, $1 US should be equal to, and then we take the Canadian money and put it on top, and the US money and put it on the bottom. Okay, so let's take 5.97, that's the Canadian for a Big Mac, and divide by $5.30, and we get 1.126, so on. Okay, so according to the trade-off, or according to the different prices that we're paying for Big Macs, the US dollar, when you trade it into Canadian dollars, $1 US should get you $1.13 Canadian. We can go the other direction. $1 Canadian should get you, so we put US dollars on the top, Canadian dollars on the bottom, and let's take our $5.30 and divide it by $5.97, and we get 0.8877, so 0.89 US dollars. Now let's look at what the exchange rate is. Okay, so based on the Big Mac, this is what the exchange rate should be. and we can compare it to what it actually is. So let's go on the internet. And let's find, so we're looking at not the Canadian dollar versus the euro, but the Canadian dollar versus the US dollar exchange rate. All right, so 1 Canadian dollar is equal to 78 cents US. One Canadian dollar equals 78 cents. Let's try that again. 78 cents US. So then we can compare the value of the Canadian dollar from what it should be to what it actually is. And when we do that, we see that the Canadian dollar, if it's actually worth 78 cents US, so if you take your Canadian dollar and you convert it into US dollars, it'll give you 78 cents for every 1 Canadian loonie. According to the Big Mac Index and purchasing power parity, 1 Canadian dollar should be worth 89 cents US. So since the actual is less than it should be, the Canadian dollar is undervalued. So if we go back to that Big Mac Index, notice that on this graph here, it shows the bar for Canada to the left. So on the Big Mac Index, any bars to the left tell you the currency is undervalued compared to the US dollar. All the currencies that go to the right are overvalued compared to the US dollar. And in fact, if we look at the number here, the raw index says that the Canadian dollar is undervalued by 12.2%. So what does this mean? That means the current exchange rate is lower than what purchasing power parity says it should be. So when you have an undervalued currency, over time, it should go back up to where it should be. And we'll talk in this level about what changes the exchange rate. But while we're looking at the Big Mac Index, what if we don't want to compare to the US? What if instead we want to compare Canada to the European Union? Okay, so in Canada, in Canadian dollars, a Big Mac is $5.90. And if we find the European Union, okay, in the European Union, you're paying 3.91 euros. Okay, so let's go back to our blank sheet. So remember that 3.91. And let's just write that out. So a Big Mac in the European Union is 3.91 euros. Okay, so let's figure out then what 1 Canadian dollar is worth in terms of euros. So in this case, we put euros on the top, 3.91, and we divide by the price of a Big Mac in Canadian dollars, so 5.97. And we do that calculation, 3.91 divided by 5.97, and you get 0.6549. So 1 Canadian dollar should be worth 65 or 0.65 euros. Okay, what is 1 Canadian dollar actually? Okay, let's go back to the web and look that up. So 1 Canadian, so let's go Canadian dollars to euros. So 1 Canadian dollar is equal to 0.65 euros. Oops. So notice that what it should be and what it actually is are the same. Okay, so here we've reached purchasing power parity between the European Union and the Canadian dollars. They're in alignment. When they're not in alignment, when what it actually is and what it should be don't match, then your currency is either under or overvalued, and the market will try to fix that, will try to adjust it. And that means your currency will be changing. Once what it should be and what it actually, once they match, then you're at that purchasing power parity. So, for example, if you went and bought a Big Mac with $5.97 Canadian, okay, that $5.97, you could convert it into euros at a rate of 1 Canadian dollar equals 0.65 euros. And once you did that, that $5.90 would convert into exactly the amount you need to buy a Big Mac in the European Union. So we have purchasing power parity. So this level we're going to look at more about the Big Mac index and our exchange rates and what changes the exchange rate. What changes the value of your currency versus another country's currency.